Hey guys, you may know me as Ophius, but this is the Carnivore's Zone. Today in Mapping 101 is our first guest appearance, if you want to call it that, from Golden Frog Studios, a famous modder creator of Cordelia and a lot of other great projects. They ask, what is discrete texturing? And if you don't know, if you haven't seen that yet, if you select that fill tool with these texture options at the very bottom, it says discrete texturing there. And then they also ask, what are the contour options under edit? So if we go back into Alt Editor, go to edit, there is the fill contour, spread contour, and smooth contour. They actually spelled it smooth contour, which is pretty funny. Just noticed that. So if I'm going to be honest, I haven't ever messed with either of these until yesterday and today. The contours I haven't messed with until literally about 30 minutes ago. And the discrete texturing, if you'll believe it, actually came to me in a dream. That is how I remember it. It sounds insane, but if you'll hear me out for just a second, I'll explain. So I was thinking about doing this tutorial for a different method that I came up with for doing the exact same thing. It is not really worth going into right now, but you can see me doing it, and if you want to follow along with what I'm doing, you are free to do so as well. But pretty much I called it X-raying a map to kind of highlight the high contrast areas of a map, to then turn this, as I called it, an X-ray into a height map, where I would then select the darker areas and fill in with the stone. But since it comes pre-built into the map, I'm not going to be doing that today. But anyway, I was thinking about making that tutorial. And I went to bed that night, and I woke up, and I had this epiphany. I said, oh, that discrete texturing thing, that's got to be what that does. Like, there's nothing else that they could be doing. I don't know why. I don't know what kind of power of the universe told me that in my sleep or what happened. But I went to my computer, and I messed with it for a second, and what do you know? It's exactly the same function. So this is game changing, okay? If you're making good maps now, you will be making phenomenal maps tomorrow. I can't overstate this enough. I love this effect. It is so cool. It is what makes the original maps so naturalistic, and it's what makes some modded maps so close to being great, but just a little uncanny, to use a word that I just hate. But anyway, so what we're going to do is turn on discrete texturing. We're going to keep it from 0 to 225, and we're going to start at, let's just go with 0, because that's how it comes by default. So you'd think, oh, it would do something. Okay. It just fills in the whole map. So that's what stopped me from using it in the past, because it comes default as 0. You want to do it again. It fills in the whole map, and then maybe you change it to, oh, I don't know, somewhere in between 0 and 1, you change it to 0.5. Okay, that did something. Maybe it's like filling in like above a certain height level. You just can't really tell what's going on. And in default maps, it's way harder to figure out what's going on. I was not working with flat maps like this. But anyway, if you haven't been able to tell already, what this difference is actually the difference in between neighboring pixels from each other. If that makes any sense at all, back to this, if you saw what was happening here, kind of the more contrasted an area is, the darker its outline is going to be. That is exactly what's going on with the discrete texturing. So here we go from like a 127 to a 140. That's a difference of 13. But from here, we're going from 127 to 131. That's just a difference of 4. So what's going on is that there are certain differences in pixel height, and this difference in the discrete texturing is just taking advantage of that. So if we make it 1, then any neighboring pixel that's higher or lower than its neighbor will be colored in with the stone. But we can make this a little cooler. If we make it, say, 5, which is pretty well the amount of distance that you cannot climb in any reasonable way, then perfect. We have a map now that, if we approximate these textures and go in game, we can now see that anywhere there's stone, you cannot climb. And I think that is a fantastic kind of map making arena tool. See, you can jump over it, but pretty much anywhere there's stone, you're not going to be able to get out of. It's a pretty good indicator tool for map making. I think it's great, and I think it just looks beautiful. So we're going to explore around here, and if I didn't already explain, I have recorded 3 takes already of this. I made this map a lot more interesting, technically off camera. It was on camera, but both of the takes were pretty floppy. But yeah, I just think this is a beautiful effect. It's really intuitive gameplay wise. I think a lot of the maps by default pretty much make it where there's stone on a slope, you just can't climb it. And I think that's a great way to indicate that pretty subtly and in a very pretty way. So with that, let's get into the contour stuff, which I must admit I don't know nearly enough about to kind of say authoritatively anything on it, but I did figure out kind of what it's doing. So in the early days of when I was modding, we're going to actually use this zoom feature real quick. And then we're going to deselect this grid just to make it a little easier to see, and then we're going to change it to the textured view. So in the early days of when I was modding, I would make use of this, I'm going to deselect discrete texturing real quick. I would make use of this density tool, which I told you to ignore in one of the previous episodes. I think it's pretty annoying to deal with, but say you made it 500 instead of 1,000. That would mean that out of the tiles in this area, that 50% of them would be turned into the texture that you have selected, and another 50% would be grass. The thing is, it is random, so it goes like this, and that might look cool at first until you try to do some things called transitive textures, which are the transitionary textures between 2 different textures that kind of blend them together, and that will create all sorts of issues for you if you've ever tried it. So I was thinking about what contour might mean, and I know vaguely what that word means in other formats, so I was thinking that it would probably smooth this out. And what do you know? When you do the smooth contour and you select a texture, you do the whole map, it smooths it out, and it makes it so only these big blobs remain. If we were to do it with the stone, it would probably do it in the other way. This is new for me too. Yeah, as you can see, the little bits of grass remain and the rest is turned into stone. Transitive textures do that sometimes when you activate them by themselves, but a lot of times, if you've noticed in a lot of the default maps, especially in Carnivores 1, some modded maps do this too. Actually, most do. There will be transitive textures up into a certain point, usually at the try point of certain textures, but sometimes where there is some weird kind of thin lines going on, they will break, and there will be some textures that jar sharply with each other in amongst the transitive textures. If that makes any sense, it would take a long time for me to explain that. Otherwise, I'll do that in another video, but hopefully that makes sense today. That is the use I figured out for the contour so far. As far as I know, I don't really know what the spread thing does. I can't really get it to do anything, but we can try to mess with this live to see if it does anything. I don't know. I can't really figure it out. And then this fill contour thing doesn't really seem to do much either. I haven't been able to figure it out. But if you want to take my example and try to figure out what these other 2 contour things do based on their names, go ahead. But I just wanted to share that smooth contour thing with you real quick. We'll go ahead and kind of fill in some more areas with it, with more stone and stuff like that, to just kind of see what they look like after the fact. We're going to deselect that selection, and we'll go over selections in another video. I just wanted to answer these questions real quick and get it out of the way, but as always, it's taking a little longer than I expected, but that's all good. And then we'll smooth that contour out so you can see where there's more stone. Obviously it's going to keep more stone, but otherwise it's mostly grass. And I think that's a pretty useful tool. I don't know how much I'll use it, but I figured it was worth mentioning, especially since there was a question asked about it. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video. I hope you learned something today. If you didn't, just tune in next time. Hopefully you will learn something then. Catch you guys then. Have a good one.